If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Simply the Law of Life, the radio show created by my friend Gary C. Johnson. I'm Keith Casebolt. Good to see you today.
It's wonderful to be here, my friend.
Oh, it is really wonderful to be here.
Oh, isn't it great being able to breathe and live and see the sunshine?
You know, after these programs, and I'm being honest with all our friends, after you and I do the radio program or the television program, when I walk outside, it seems like the air smells better, the grass looks greener, the sky is bluer. You get in an upbeat attitude, and all of a sudden, everything around you, the birds chirping, and people might think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, that's the effect when you start becoming happy.
State of mind.
It really is.
And happiness, basically, in the long run, is a choice, assuming you can learn to deal with the voices in your head.
And Gary, why is it that some of the people who have real problems, some of the people that come into your office that have been mangled and ran over and they're broken, you have told me that they are some of the most positive, uplifting people that you've ever met, that half the time they're encouraging you. Where does that come from?
They've learned to deal with the negatives in their brain and to ignore them. I was reading in Men's Health the other day about this black bodybuilder who's 75 years old now. I think his name's Robinson. Okay, not positive.
Mm-hmm. But
when he was starting out, there was no contracts for blacks. And this person that was interviewing said, well, why did you keep going? Because you went to Europe and you really did well, and then you came back here and you won this Mr. Olympia award in the 90s. He said, you have to understand that for my situation, I was constantly having the negs in my head, the negatives.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I had to get to the point to where I could absolutely, totally ignore them in order to go on.
So he understood what we've been reading from Nancy Collier about the thoughts are going to be there. He just disconnected from them.
He disconnected from them. And he went on and was successful in spite of all the odds. Because, as he said, I didn't pay any attention to the negs, as he called them, the negatives.
Yeah. So he gave them a name,
mm-hmm.
which we've talked about on this program before, the voice in your head, those thoughts. Yeah. He just shortened it down for negative to neg and gave it a name and said, I'm just not going to pay attention to it.
And that's what on this Can't Stop Thinking Nancy Collier is talking about. But that was an example I wanted to use for my friends, that you can disconnect and ignore the negatives. You have that power to do so. It's just not easy to do it.
No, it's not easy to do it. I mean, I don't want any of our friends to get the idea that you and I are sitting here saying, we figured it all out and this is easy. It's not easy. It's a daily battle to try and ignore those negative thoughts or that inner voice that says bad things to you.
That's true. So, my friends, today we're going to read you a little bit more about some of the statistics that Nancy Collier has in her book about negative thoughts in your head.
Great book. I got my copy. It finally came in. Can't Stop Thinking, How to Let Go of Anxiety and Free Yourself. It's by Nancy Collier. And I got to tell you, Gary, to our friends, if you get this book, you're not going to be able to put it down. You're going to start reading and read it again and read it again because it
is true.
It's life.
Well, I think it's Dale Carnegie book too.
Yeah.
For years, I touted how to win friends and influence people. She's just taking it to a different level. Brilliant woman out, in my opinion. So read to my friends a little bit about what she says about that section there.
I will. This is the section called I Obsess About What Hurts the Most. Nancy says, have you ever noticed how much time you spend thinking about what went wrong, is wrong, and will go wrong? If the answer is a lot, guess what? You're normal. If it doesn't feel normal or good, according to a study by the National Science Foundation, humans experience as many as 60,000 thoughts per day. Deepak Chopra sets the number even higher, between 60 and 80,000 thoughts per day. Furthermore, according to the research, 80% of those thoughts are going to be negative, and 90% of them are redundant. They tell us the same thing over and over again. Oddly, the more negative a thought, the more we're inclined to engage in it and return to it. If you do the math, that's a lot of negative and repetitive thinking. When a thought appears, we are instantly off on the ride that it offers. We view its invitation as a mandate, and we jump on board without consideration, no matter where it's headed. Indeed, thinking can take us to some dangerous rides and into some dark and dreadful neighborhoods inside our own mind. This, to me, is absolutely startling.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Here we are trying to talk about being happy and how we can do it, and when you look at the numbers of what is stacked up against you, 80% of your thoughts, up to 80,000 thoughts, are going to be negative, and then 90% of them are redundant. So it's the same old story and the same old movie day after day after day.
That's why it's so important, as she's saying, to learn to disconnect from them.
And in this book, Gary, you and I were talking about it. Isn't it amazing that you relive that negative that happened to you, or the mistake that happened, or the lost job, or the lost relationship, and yet you go over it and over it and over it, thinking that you're going to find some answer to it, when all you're really doing is making yourself miserable.
But we all do it.
But we hear people say...
And we think we're going to change what's already happened by reliving it in our mind.
And we hear people say, I can't get it out of my head. I can't let go of it. We hear that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And
I can't get over that.
I bet we've all got a friend that every time we see them, we know what the subject's going to be because they're stuck with this movie playing, The Problem, and that's what they talk about.
The question is, what do you do about it?
So are we to say, okay, that was an event, it happened, I can't do a thing about it, I can only worry about today?
I think she says in that book that you cannot stop thoughts.
They're going to come.
But what you can do is not be a participant in them.
So if there was a problem or an event that happened 10 years ago and it pops into your head, don't get mad. That's going to happen. You have no control over that.
But don't participate in it.
Don't go through the movie again.
Right. Don't play the movie.
What
with
if
it.
I'd said this? What if I had done this? If I'd only made this move, things
She said,
would have
in other
been...
words, don't make it you.
Oh.
It's not hard. It's not easy.
Hey, my friend, right now, everybody that's listening to this program is saying, this is impossible. It can't be done.
I can't remember what the thought was, but one popped into my head last night, and I was thinking about it, which I shouldn't have been. And then I said to myself, you need to just observe this. And then something else in my head said, but you're enjoying doing it.
Well, you and I were reading in the book about one of the stories where a lady said, I can't let go. I've got to keep this issue or this problem. So you're kind of predicting your own future. You know, much like the email we got the one time from the lady who said, I cannot be happy. And you said on the radio program, she's right. She has predicted what the future will be, because no matter what good fortune will come her way, she's already predicted how she will perceive it.
And she'll perceive it in a way that makes her miserable.
Hey, it's too late now. Well, yeah, she'll say anything. Yeah, now something good happens, but I could.
But my friends that are listening
are not going to do that.
They're taking notes. They're paying attention. They're sick of being miserable. They're sick of reliving all the bad things that's ever happened in their life. If anything good happened, it's okay if you relive it.
Boy, isn't that true freedom to be?
But you forget those.
You know what? That's what the next chapter talks about. You want me to read this about why you hang on to negative and let go of the good?
Absolutely.
At an evolutionary level, we focus on the negative as a survival instinct. Dr. Rick Hansen explains, we have a negativity bias when it comes to our attention. Negative information creates more activity in the brain, more firings than positive information of equal intensity. Our brains are also better at noticing the negative than they are at noticing the positive. In an effort to protect us, our brains exaggerate threats, undervalue our abilities, our strengths. They obscure our capacity to deal with difficulty. We're Velcro for negative experiences, and we're Teflon for good experiences. Hansen says we think and remember about anything that goes wrong in our life, and at the same time, we forget and discount and minimize what's good. Now, let's stop right there and talk about that. We've talked on this program before that in a day's time, 100 things could go great for you. One thing goes bad. And
that's the thing you think about that evening.
And what do we go home and tell the spouse? What a horrible day. You won't believe what went wrong to me.
Well, my friends, how many of you have thoughts pop into your head about the wonderful things that's happened to you, the good things?
Yeah.
And how many of you have thoughts pop into your head about bad things?
So today, if we got up and did like a checklist and we would say, hey, I'm alive, I'm healthy enough to be up and around, I can get up out of a chair and walk, I've got a job, I've got my family, we could do this long checklist of good things. But more than likely, what Dr. Hansen is saying here in Nancy Collier's book is we wake up thinking about that one problem and start the day off with a negative thought.
And that comes back to survival, because you have to solve the problem in your mind, in your opinion, in order to have the other good times. So you lose the benefit of the other good times, worrying about living and reliving that thing that's already happened that you can't change. You can't change anything in the past.
No, nothing.
Now, that's just a fact. You can't undo what's been done.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you think about it and how much you say, what if in your mind, what if I'd done this, what if I'd done that, what if they had said this, or what if they had done that, it's not going to change it.
Oh, my goodness. You read a list one time. I know you'll recall this on the radio. Oh, I could have made straight A's if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. You know, I could have gone to medical school if I'd wanted to. I could have played on the football team if I'd have wanted to. And you said our lives turn into a lot of those excuses.
I could have, if.
I could have, or if, that you, oh yeah, if the coach didn't, if he hadn't just hated me. But we have all of those things that we keep reliving.
Well, the lesson that I was trying to teach when I talked about those what ifs, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Is we use that as a crutch, I guess, for our own sanity. I know in school, thinking, just myself as an example, there are times I didn't study the way I should have. Okay.
Okay.
And then I looked back on it later and said, well, if I had just studied, I would have got an A.
Mm.
Well, I didn't have to face the fear or the rejection of studying and not getting the A in my mind then.
So there was a fear that if you actually gave it your best and did the best you could do, it could end up being an A minus or a B plus, and you would have been let down.
Well, I didn't know that.
Right.
You know, this was my brain protecting me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Didn't want Gary to get his feelings hurt.
It didn't want me. It was that the hidden fear of failure. So if you go ahead and act in a way that more likely than not you will fail,
Mm-hmm.
then you can always say, well, if I had tried, I would not have failed. Does that make any sense?
Oh, I'm sitting here right now going, how many times have I done this in my life? Oh, I could have got so-and-so for a client if I'd have tried.
Yeah.
But the fear factor of saying, well, I tried, and they said no. Or, someone
Prevents you from
saying,
doing it.
I
Yeah.
could have got a job promotion if I'd have wanted that job, but I didn't go after it.
Right. I didn't really want it.
I didn't
I
want
could have done it if I'd wanted to.
it. Yeah.
See, that's a safety mechanism we have.
So it's like a survival thing? It's a
I don't
protection?
know what it is. I just know that in looking back on it and trying to just study myself,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know at the times I've said, well, if I had tried or if I'd have really studied, I would have done whatever and was perfectly satisfied with that, whereas I may not have been satisfied with had I tried and studied the end result.
I got you. If you worked your tail off and you did everything you could do and the end result wasn't what you wanted, you would have been hurt and disappointed.
Whereas you don't have that hurt and disappointment if you look back and say, if I had just done this.
So I told you about an individual one time that they had a little say, and they always said, always expect the worst. And if anything good happens, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I talked to you about this, and I said, I kind of feel sad for this person living their life that way. And you told me you don't understand. They're protecting themselves.
And you do the same thing.
Yeah, and I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And you do it without even knowing.
The brain is so complicated.
In fact, friends, this is the God's truth, and I told Gary this story. I did a project that I was really proud of, and one of my friends said, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, it'll never fly. There's no way it's going to work." And those words came out of my mouth before I ever even thought about it. And I caught myself and said, "Why would you say that?
Safety.
The project you did was good. It had every reason to work, but yet I was protecting myself
From the potential
of failure
failure. Now, we do that all the time.
without even knowing."
Yep. But the old what if I had just tried, if I'd have gone out for the team, I'd have been the star. You know, all of those things in our head that we buy into and believe.
So all the way back to the caveman, it's no different than the guy saying, stay in the cave, you'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go outside the cave, something's going to get you and eat you and kill you.
Very well, a high probability.
High probability. So here we are today. There's no dinosaurs. We're not in the cave. But we're still doing that same thing of saying, don't go try because you could get hurt.
Except we've switched it from the biological need to survive from the cave to the psychological need to survive now.
So
That's their battle now, is psychologically
it went from the physical.
to the psychological.
Wow.
That's what's happening. That's what this book is about.
Same principle.
Same principle.
Yeah. I think
Let's read a little more.
Yeah. I think there's a part here that says our minds are working around the clock to keep our self-worth, our ego, from being injured or annihilated. With the real-life carrots and sticks that were coming at us before, now the potential threat shifts to our identity. The story we tell ourselves about who we are. We're always scanning and looking to ensure that no situation will damage our value or our self-esteem. While I'm sure that there's many sticks to avoid that we survived in the forest, now in modern times the potential threats is the fact that our ego has infinite things coming at it. It is mandatory that we keep ourselves emotionally intact. At the most basic level, we return to our negative thoughts because we're trying to turn a negative experience into something more positive, essentially to make it come out a different way. Our mental replays are attempts to re-script an experience we don't want into something we want, to reestablish our self-worth and emotional balance. If we could just understand our negative situation better, know our problem more clearly, spend more time with it, eventually we'll be able to make it disappear, or at least we could feel better. We hold tight to our pain so that we can figure out how to make it go away. We believe an answer exists inside every negative situation, and if we can unearth it through thinking, we could be free from pain. We've got it backwards.
That's right.
Instead of us being free from pain,
We're just
are
enhancing
increasing the pain.
Enhancing it. But not turning it loose and letting it go.
Oh, my goodness. Now, that's a revelation.
Well, told you she's smart.
This lady has got it.
A psychotherapist. And she's, I guess, had many, many, many clients over the years. And she started adding 2 plus 2 to see what it comes up to. And she finally figured it out. We are our own worst enemy. Literally, we're probably the only enemy we have is ourselves.
So now, if I've got the steps right, we, because of fear, we don't go after that job promotion, or we don't go after that relationship, or start that company, or whatever it is, because we don't want to get hurt. And the reason that is because the one time we tried it, it turned into a negative experience, and now that's all we think about is that one time that we tried and got hurt, and we keep replaying it over and over, trying to figure out what went wrong and what we should have done.
That's right. As though it'll change it.
As though we can go back and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we could go back and fix it, then we could move on and be free of pain. We could go after those other things.
Whereas the only way to be free of the pain is to not buy into it and continue to do it.
Realizing that those things are going to happen.
Right.
There's going to be good things. There's going to be bad things. You take them for what they are.
Anybody that thinks that they're not going to run into a pothole occasionally in life is crazy. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have good things happen, a lot more good things than bad.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to probably more likely than not concentrate on the bad.
So the truth of the matter is, you have bad things that happen. You have things that go wrong. I have bad things.
If you have people in your life, you will have bad things happen, okay?
Yeah, there you go.
That's just the facts.
If you're not completely by yourself and you have any interaction at all or anyone around you, there's going to be negative and bad things that come up.
And it's a whole lot worse, though, if you don't have people around you.
Oh, yeah, because then you got to deal with your worst enemy.
All the time.
Which is you.
Which is you.
You don't even get a break from it.
That's right. So,
you
pretty
know,
complicated, huh?
In one sense, it is as complicated as all get out. In another sense, the way that Nancy Collier puts it in this book, it almost says there's an answer. There's help. We could do this.
We can be happy and we can be content, Keith, if we can figure out, and really you and I got a pretty good start on it when you get right down to it, how to not relive those negatives in our lives.
Yeah. To let go.
To turn them loose, or just ignore them.
It's tough to do.
Don't participate in the thoughts. That's what he keeps saying in the book. Don't make them you.
Mm-hmm.
You are not. Those thoughts are not you. You didn't ask for them. They come all on their own.
You know, I had lunch with an individual I hadn't seen in 10 or 12 years that I used to work with, and when we got together, guess what? The first thing came up, the first subject, all of the stuff that happened 10 or 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. Instead of me saying, "Hey, what's going on with you today? I mean, what are you doing?" And we weren't talking about today and future. We were reliving a 10-year-old situation. And identically to what this book said.
And did it help?
Absolutely not. No, there was no changes, there was no answers, there was no ending, there was no free of the pain. It was a waste of time to relive.
And time that would have been really well spent with that person.
On talking about
the future and the things and what they're doing now.
What's your plans? What
and
are you into?
How we're going to get together. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're 100% right, and so is this book. I mean, there was an individual that always said, "Oh, you shouldn't have to work at being happy. It should come naturally." Gary, that's not true. You got to work at it every minute.
You have to work at dealing with your enemy, which is you.
Good luck, because I'm telling you.
My friends can do it. They're going to do it. Every one of them that's listening is going to do it. I have total faith that they will get to the point to where that they will not become obsessed and relive all of those negative things in their life.
Nothing makes Gary or me any happier than when we meet one of our friends or we get an email. And by the way, you can email Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. If you're applying any of this, or you know secrets that Gary and I don't know to deal with these things, give Gary an email and let him know. But when I talk with people and they say, "That was good, that's helping," I'm like, I'm glad, because
it's helping us too, right?
It's helping us too, and I'm right with you. You can catch Gary's television show Tuesday nights on WYMT, Simply the Law of Life at 7 p.m. A late-night replay is in Central Kentucky on WKYT, and that's your CBS affiliate. And should you start your week early and your weekend early, catch us on the Fox affiliate in Central Kentucky, 6:30 a.m. on Monday and 6:30 a.m. on Friday. Again, if you need to get in touch with Gary, it's Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. My friend, this was a fun show. I enjoyed it.
Hey, we're going to be happy.
That's the goal. On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.
Thank you for listening to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.